So I would love to talk today about oneness and the nature of consciousness and reality, and how I believe that we are all going on the same journey as after all we are all one. And I think this is where our consciousness as humanity is going. At the moment, we are all gravitating towards a frequency that separateness is an illusion. Even though our bodies maybe seem to be separated in time and space, our consciousness is one, and our consciousness is where we come from, our source originally. And I believe, like many other teachers believe, that everything is consciousness ultimately, and what we see out there in the world is a reflection of our own consciousness. The world is a mirror of what's going on within us. And so when we see fear and separation and greed or whatever we don't like outside in the external world, is because inside we feel disconnected from our source, which is pure love and has no lack and has no separation and is everything and doesn't want or need for anything. And I actually also believe that as a species, as a human race, I think we've been at this point before in our consciousness. There's many sort of ancient texts and things that say that our consciousness sort of moves in a spiral, and sometimes we are in a growth phase, and sometimes we're in an expansive phase, and sometimes we're in a contracting, and we sort of spiral in our evolution of consciousness. And I do believe that at one time, maybe the times of the Bible, maybe another time, that this law of oneness, this knowing that we are all one and our consciousness is primary reality, was a lived experience for most people, was a fact, and it's only now when we look back and we see, oh my God, all these amazing things were done. People healed by belief and things like that. Why? Because they had no belief in lack. Maybe they had that purest form of awareness. Remember, they didn't have all the things distracting them from themselves like we do now, like our technology and all the sort of modern things of the world. They didn't have that. Many ancient civilizations didn't have very much at all, apart from nature and their own consciousness and other people. So I believe they were probably much more connected in a sense than we are now. The difference that we have now is that we have all of that information, all of that data, everything that has kind of gone before us in humanity. In our lifetime, we have something that where we can access it. For the first time in humanity's evolution, we have the internet. And if you think about it, there's never been anything like that, where we've all had access to, I guess, in a sense, like oneness, like the totality of every bit of information that has ever existed. For the most part, not everything. Obviously, there's information that isn't on the internet, but there's a huge, huge amount of information that is online that we can access and that we can learn from and integrate. And that's really a key thing. It's something that I'm working on at the moment. And in the past I have been very guilty of staying stuck in intellectualizing all of this stuff, but practicing it in real world terms is huge. And I found that really comes in the form of love, giving yourself more love, speaking your truth, setting kind boundaries, learning how to communicate, knowing what your triggers are, knowing what your beliefs are and the stories that you're telling yourself about reality, seeing if you can perceive things another way, letting go of old stories in terms of beliefs in lack. It's just a process of shedding. And Rumi said this. I love Rumi so much. Might even do a whole series on Rumi, because Rumi was just so wise. Like, everything Rumi said, pretty much, like, you can read it and it just strikes a chord. Rumi said that your task is not to seek for love, but it is to dissolve all the barriers within you that are blocking it. So what if we were all the purest form of love that we could imagine, and that our very core is who we are, that we lack nothing, that we are divinely perfect. We're born into the world, and yet it's just our conditioning and the layers of the judgments from others and our self-judgments and our disconnection from that love that causes us to act in ways and behaviours that aren't loving, because we're disconnected. And we see it. It's all within. It is all within. And the more we keep going back to within as the source, and working on ourselves, and there's no limit, I don't think, to how much deeper our love can go for ourselves. You know, we can't say, I'm fully healed, I'm fully, there's always layers of conditioning and layers of things. And I feel that all the time, and it was one of the reasons why I was quite scared to put out content, because even I look back at things that I've done 2 years ago, and I don't believe some of the things that I've said or I've not believe, but my thinking has evolved, and my blind spot, like, I've seen more blind spots in myself, and uncovering new things all the time, really. And it's sort of like a continual process of unfolding. And I think there's got to be a gentleness in that as well, that, we can feel like we know some of the truth, but we won't ever know the whole truth. We can only become it, right? I guess if we know that the truth is love, but we don't, obviously, we may not always act in completely purest love form in every situation, and we need to give ourselves grace for that, because we are all getting to this point where it's about forgiving others, forgiving ourselves, forgiving the stories that were imprinted upon us, forgiving ourselves for not believing that we are complete within, forgiving ourselves for acting out in ways because of this feeling of lack of love. So whether that's intense attachment, control, fear, grasping, all of those sort of things, that this is where our ego operates from. And as our consciousness matures, we start to see what the ego does and how it is trying to keep us safe. So it does have a very valid function, and it was formed at a time where you needed it. You probably needed to have protection, because some stories or things were being imprinted into your mind that really weren't true. Think of a lot of the programming in the media. A lot of the stories we're told are not true to or resonant with love. So therefore, if we start to believe them, it can cause a disconnect within ourselves. If we don't know at the core, or we're not being at the core who we fully are. And I've seen recently, like, everybody, like, just listening to other sort of spiritual teachers and just general people around, it's like we're all dealing with the same emotions. This is why we are one, because we are dealing with all of those emotions that come into the surface, and we share the same emotions. We share those same feelings. And greater and deeper levels of compassion, like could you have a little bit more compassion for yourself today? What would that look like? Could you extend a bit more grace to yourself and know how much you tried and how much you've evolved, even in the last year, you know? And yeah, it's relaxing, I suppose, into the truth of our being, and knowing that, you know, we just need to let our love radiate outwards. And yeah, people may receive it, people may not. People may have judgments about it, people may not. But what is important is that you are standing in your truth, you're standing in what you love, you're standing in the fullness of who you are, and expressing yourself in the most loving way you can. And we don't always get it right. We don't always get it right. I've been reading, I think it's called Trusting the Light or something like that, by Tara Brach as well recently, who's a mindfulness teacher. And I think when we're on this journey, it's when we're committed to ourselves and our spiritual development and our development of consciousness in this lifetime, we can read the books, but then it's like, how do these things show up? Oh, they show up for me in those stories and those beliefs that, oh, that person hasn't got back to me, or they've said this to me, therefore this means this, or, you know, I'm a bit scared to go outside my comfort zone here because of this or that, or I'm scared to take the plunge and make this decision because of this or that, or, you know that I need to distance myself from X, Y, or Z, but I don't feel like I can, or whatever it is. It's just about really listening to ourselves and going back to the inwards first. And there's lots of tools that we can use, but the best one is really just nature and solitude. Nature and solitude for the evolution of our consciousness is nature and solitude. And then we can read, watch, listen to all of this wonderful stuff that's on the internet that has incredible power for the evolution of our consciousness. We can go for walks in solitude, especially, and I read this yesterday, especially when we're emotionally triggered and feeling, like triggered, like something's triggered us, it's angered us, it's upset us, or we're feeling fear. And we go for a walk in nature and we can just feel into that emotion and surrender to it and accept it and love it essentially. And yeah, and then we integrate with other people, and then we see how, because everything is one and because we're all one, our beliefs are showing up with everybody. Every single person you have interactions with and relationships